Here's the first two. Please write them down. So we've got the first cost of quality category is prevention costs, which are costs associated with preventing defects, whatever that might be. Second category of cost of quality are appraisal costs, which are primarily costs associated with inspection, okay, with attempts to try and identify product costs before they are shipped, okay? And then shade to the right. And we've got internal failure costs, which are costs of defective products found before it leaves the plant. So cost to fix something before it leaves is a lot less than cost to fix it after it leaves. So that includes rework scrap. Some of it's going to be thrown away. Cost of internal failure was just to throw it away, but that's still a lot better than having a customer receive a defective product. And then finally, there are external failure costs. Cost of defective product found by customer. So that's you or I receiving, buying, you know, something that's defective. You know, imagine sitting in a restaurant and watching a bug crawl out from under the green beans. That's a defective product. Okay, and the important thing here, exclamation point, it's very difficult to know the damage that can be done. And I've talked about the Radio Shack example. Anybody ever heard of Radio Shack? I mean, yeah, they got kind of funny Christmas advertisements that are now starting. I've spoken just briefly about the fact that I've done some recording and have stuff on iTunes. But when I first got started, I was recording onto a very, very inexpensive cassette tape device. And it recorded just 4 tracks of stuff, of sounds. And then what I had to do was I had to mix down to a regular cassette. And I didn't have anything with RCA jacks in to be able to do that mix down process. And so I went to Radio Shack to buy a dual cassette standalone little device, you know, kind of a module that you can use in a modular stereo. And so I went to Radio Shack, bought exactly what I thought I needed, went home, plugged everything in, popped a tape in, tried to mess around with recording, press record, mess around with recording. It didn't quite act right. If you're familiar with cassettes, sometimes you can tell there's things, this isn't quite acting like you think it should. So I pull out the cassette. Do we all know what a cassette is? I guess I had to make that clear. Do we all know what a cassette is? Okay. Because pretty soon people are not going to know what cassettes are anymore. And so I pull out the cassette, and then I pull out film, and film, and film, and get it all out. And me being the incredibly smart person that I am, put in another cassette and go through the exact same process. Pull out, and then I'm a little irritated, right? This thing's brand new. The store manager sold it to me. And I immediately put it in his box and all but threw it back at the store manager when I returned and said, I don't want another one. I want my money back. And I went then down the road to the local stereo superstore and found the exact same thing with another label that was, $20 cheaper than the Radio Shack one that was on sale. And I still own that particular unit. But the point of the story is, I have told that story to every class I've taught since then. So we're approaching 1,500 people that I've told that story to. And I have absolutely no clue. And in fact, now it's going on iTunes U. And ultimately, I hope that this class winds up on YouTube. So, literally millions of people could hear me tell the story. Not that they're going to, but in theory, millions of people could watch me on iTunes, and iTunes U, or iTunes U, and YouTube, and hear this story, and hear this bad press about Radio Shack. And who knows, they might choose to kind of, maybe I'll try the store next door first. And if that happens, bad word of mouth, can one person influence a lot of people's choices about where they shop? Potentially. Like I said, I have absolutely no clue. And the point is not that I am trying to change your opinions about what you should be doing and where you should be shopping, but the fact is I have told literally 1,400 people in my academic career this particular story. So there's some potential there. And so this is potentially costly. That's the point. The point is not that Dr. Fessler is highly influential, has substantial influence on people's buying habits, but rather that bad word of mouth can do a lot of damage. Okay. And look what we have here. What we have for Ford Motor Company, we have a cost of quality report. See, those are those four categories of cost of quality: prevention, appraisal, internal failure, external failure. It's interesting to note, look what Ford did. External failure. They don't know for sure how much bad word of mouth damages. So they don't really know the true costs of bad word of mouth. And so what they did was they made an assumption. They assumed that all the things we can measure, if you look at 1978, $400 million, that's all they could measure. That's a lot of zeros even in itself. But they explicitly assume that that number that they can measure in their financial reports is only 10% of the real cost. So they're assuming bad word of mouth by Dr. Fessler and others who